I'm gonna talk and I should do this. We're gonna get us a song, by the way. One day you're gonna hear the song instead of this. Praise the Lord, everybody. This is Apostle Damian Hinton, and I'm so glad to be with you today. I'm here again with my co-host on Real Talk, Minister Natalie Johnson. Amen. And we're looking forward to having a very lively discussion. And like I said, we're going to be doing these. We're working on our programming. It's going to be a great time of conversation. And we want to lend our voices to what we believe is a great conversation going on around the world and around the country about so many different issues, and really how we look through it through the lens of faith and what it's all about, but have real conversations. And I hope you join us as our church, our ministry, is all that we're going to be doing is bringing some real conversations that we can all kind of touch and agree about, or at least create some dialogue. So if you join us and you'll like and share, or you invite others to join us today, it's going to be a great conversation. So listen, Natty, how you doing? It's good seeing you.
I'm good. I'm doing
Outstanding. So we had a great service today. And God really visited us. We appreciate it. We're building up our audience. We got an audience of one today, but we're looking forward to really getting people engaged in our conversation. But
Yes.
What I find is there are a lot of things going out in media today. Obviously, we got the coronavirus that is still very prevalent today, and there are a lot of conversations that can be had about that.
Yes.
We also know that there are issues when it comes to in social injustice. There are a lot of conversations that can be had about that. There are issues going on with redefinition of where we are sexually right now. There's a lot of things that are going on. But I want to start today in the area that we were dancing around last time we were together, which is the two sides of this: Black Lives Matter, and of course the organization called Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
And I'd like to draw a distinction from my perspective, and you can kind of jump in where you can.
Okay.
So I'm a black man, and I've been black for 48 years, and I've always believed my life matters.
Okay.
So, my life does matter. That's a reality. But there's a difference between, saying my life matters as an African American man, a black man. But there's a difference between that and actually, the organization Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
And there's a big difference. And there's a lot to be said about the organization. And so what are some of your thoughts about that?
Well, they're not the same thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
We're going to go clean, cut, and dry that the viewpoint of what we see and what we say as individuals, and we say Black Lives Matter, is not the same thing that the organization Black Lives Matter stands for.
Mm-hmm.
So Black Lives Matter in themselves say on their own page, on their own website, what do we believe? If you ever take the opportunity to go look at it, it says nothing about you at all.
No.
A basic heterosexual black man is not mentioned anywhere on their belief system. It's everything about transgender men or women, anti-nuclear household, which is a household that does not include the man.
Yeah.
That does not include you.
Yeah.
Or what they call is the Western normality. So we're so-called taught that men are supposed to be in the household. It's not really how it's supposed to be.
Which flies the face. It flies the face of even African culture, by the way, because that's not Western culture. That is Eastern culture. But anyway, go ahead.
Everything has to be looked at as it was brought to us from Europe in order to be pushed to the side, because a lot of times they use slavery as a backdrop or an excuse to push a cause when it comes to racial injustice, or when you say Black Lives That Matters and then I tell you, oh, this is Western normality, you then associate it with slavery, and then you assume that it's correct.
Because we really have been, and I hate to say this, and it's a hard thing to say to a lot of people who may be watching us, by the way, because we have in many ways have been, kind of taught to be like this. And
taught to be victims.
We've been taught that. One of my greatest issues, believe it or not, I had a conversation with someone, and I know it's a hard thing to hear, but please hear me out with this. I find that what we do is every February, the month starts out with the picture of the man with the whips on his back, as if that is our current condition. Like, and they don't ever want to let us forget. So the reason why you show pictures is to remember when. And it often most people aren't skilled enough, and I hate to say this, skilled enough to say, yeah, that's what it was, but that's not where I am now, and that's not where I want to stay. We usually lock in to where we look in that picture and we start getting fixated with where we are. And that's a very dangerous place.
I actually had a conversation the other day about that. I said, are we really teaching our children to be anything less? Because if you don't understand, if all you show me when it comes to Black history, first of all, and we're going to be real, if you're talking about every other kind of history throughout the year but Black history, Black history gets a month. You may touch
28 days.
Oh yeah, the shortest month. Look, the shortest month. You may touch on small things, but you don't really touch on the positive impact of the Black community until February.
But you know what we talk about now. I'm gonna make sure we clear. We talk about Abraham Lincoln. He wasn't Black. We talk about Martin Luther King, who was next. We talk about, and to be honest with you, maybe got some Rosa Parks lit in there. Maybe slide some people in there.
Like, so what I'm saying,
but then he go to Obama, and then that's the end of our history now. And Michael, I can't let go Michael out.
What I would give them the piece in is that you find out, this person invented this. That's the only time you find out that this person invented the hot comb, or this person invented this. This person came
C.J. Walker, come on now.
This person decided,
a millionaire. She's a millionaire, by the way.
Majority of the things that we function with on a day-to-day, if not, it may not have been patented by a Black person, but it was originally invented by one.
Yeah.
The bulk of the things that we use to function on a day-to-day. And that's the only time that they get discussed in as far as history is concerned.
Yeah.
Throughout the year, we teach the slavery, we teach the rebellion, we teach the slavery, and
Immoral rebellion.
Immoral rebellion, and the transition of how it turns into now. The problem is, are we creating PSTD in our children?
Wow.
To only view us as that until. So when they get around a different culture, they only know that this culture enslaved me. So how do I function around them?
That's
how do we teach them to be multicultural?
And that's amazing to hear somebody your age saying something like that. I've said it to you before, because that is a reality. We have a tendency to limit Black history to 28 days and 29 in a leap year. And we try to focus all of the history of our American experience, by the way, and slavery, because again, we think that all Black history in America has to deal with what happened in 1619. And that's not even true, by the way. That's not the whole story. There are numbers of people that can give different accounts, how we had much more influence, and many other people did too. So I don't want to, want people to lead us out.
That's the thing.
There's a lot more.
Where do we get the positive roles that Black people played in the growing of America? Whether we got account for it then or not.
Yeah.
When are we going to do that now?
I think it's we've kind of left in the hands of parents, and largely because.
But they don't know either.
Well, they don't. That's a problem, because we don't know.
So that leads us into, do Black lives really matter to Black people?
Well, it only matters when there's the assault against us, that we feel is an assault against us, and we perceive this as an assault. We respond, and then we trigger back to those moments, and then that's where we start.
The PTSD.
Yes, we have those issues.
So when we're threatened, our life matters.
Yeah.
But when we look inside ourselves, are we teaching ourselves the things we need to know in order to make sure that our children can function in the country or function in any environment and be successful without feeling inferior to the environment that they're in?
Well, the only way to do that is that we have to make a decision that we are Americans. And that's the biggest issue we have right now, because there is this movement, or at least this attitude, that we're really not Americans. We're some other group of people living here, when that's not the case. Our culture is American. Now, when I go to Africa, I go, when I've been to other countries, when I go there, you know what they say? You are an American. They don't look at my skin color. Now, some of my roots can be traced back to Angola, Cameroon, the Bantu people. It can be traced back to that. But the reality is, when I go to these other countries, they say you're an American. Yeah. That's my culture. That is really my heritage.
That's who we are. We're not. If we go anywhere else, right now, I cannot go to Canada. I cannot go to Europe. I cannot go to Rome because I'm an American. And they don't like how we're handling COVID. So I am not allowed right now. I don't get to say, no, I'm black. I'm coming. No, you're American. You staying where you are. Yeah. I will not stamp your passport. You're not allowed. Yeah. So technically, what am I? Like, but again, I don't move on the.
But we don't. But you know, this is a different. This is really in the past. I would dare say in the past, really 60 years or so, that we've seen a slow migration away from being American. So there was such a fight, early on for us to be identified as Americans. Now that there is some level of we are Americans, there's this fight. Let's get away from identifying with the Western culture. Which is where we live. I mean, I hate to say this, and whether we try to deny it or not, it is a part of who we are now. I don't agree with it because it is individualistic. Western culture is all about the individual. That means the individual's rights are stronger than the rights of the group, which is very, very dangerous. Because if you got one person that's upset about one small thing, they can upset the entire community. The entire group can be disturbed. And that's a very dangerous thing to do.
So the problem is, that is also, if what we're asking to be a part of is, it's like a separation thing. So we can't separate ourselves in the midst. It's like one of those things that's like, when I come into an environment, I don't really care about the environment because I'm an agent of change. So I come into an environment and my rules go because they're my rules. Right. And for me, you don't get to decide my rules. So when it comes to my blackness and my view on community over individuality, when I go into an environment, I function as a community. Right. So we as black people have to not take on the individual mindset.
Because we can't. That's not our culture.
No, I'm saying no. But the problem is we are doing it because
I know we are.
That's where the whole Black Lives Matter is not transitioning into our own culture, because we're fighting not to be American, but we're becoming more American. We're becoming more individual. So we're not holding on to our core values, which is community.
And the reality is America is like that. America is a group of communities. A matter of fact, it's part of one of the things you see on the dollar bill, e pluribus unum, out of many, one, right? So the idea is that there are a lot of different communities, right? And we're all different, but in all that, we're still one community. So we may have come from different places, different experiences, but we're still one community. Our issue is that when you have a person that may come in as an individual, which is fine, you can come in with your individual desires and wants, and we ought to respect that at some level. However, what you don't do is you don't turn over the apple cart because you try to get to the apple at the bottom of the cart. That's not what we do. And we find ourselves right now is that we understand the importance of community. So community has to outweigh everything else. So when I've been to Africa, I've really been impressed by, and it's not perfectly done, but it is better than what I've seen here for sure. When I go to Africa and someone's getting married, for instance, and your husband have to do, he have to come and talk to me, and I might not like him. I say, well, I'm sorry, you're gone, right? And so, your mother can like him. I might not like him. It's fine. It's okay. I've been given that charge by somebody else. So the idea is, so the idea is that when you come to the community, and again, you come into the community, you accept the responsibility of that community. And what I love about going to Africa is it's that whole negotiation with the families. Not the husband and the wife that are getting married, but the families come together and they talk about what they expect from the other person. It's a community action because marriage is about the community. Everything we do is about the community. It's about our families. It's about the legacies and our experiences.
Generation.
And it's about generation. That's how we build.
So that's
Right.
where we are lost.
Yeah.
We're lost in the ability that
Yep.
we have not adapted a mentality to build for the generation behind us.
No, we haven't.
We are still working in a mentality that I have to do for myself in the midst of my struggle. I function differently the way you say I think is because I really had my father, my dad said to me, and I will never forget, my father said to me, you should not fight the battles that I fight.
Right.
You are supposed to fight the next level. I'm going to do whatever I can to beat the battles on my level. You are to go to the next level and fight those battles at the next level.
Yes.
And you are supposed to pass something down to the next generation.
Yes.
I don't care if it's money, knowledge, whatever the process is. So for me, not even having kids, one of the big things that I've always talked about, I was having this conversation with my mom and everything. Like, I started looking at my nieces and my nephews, and I realized the impact on different generations that I even have, even though I don't have children. So you can look at yourself, and you need, as a person, when do we take responsibility for ourselves to say, what impact am I having on my community? What impact do I have on the black race? And if you are one of these people out here killing somebody else, you're not doing a positive impact.
No.
So you cannot tell me Black Lives Matter to you.
You're talking good too, by the way. I agree. Go ahead.
If you're out here and you're tearing your community down, like you're like destructing your area, you haven't built anything, you don't clean up your neighborhood, you don't see the little boy that's on the street and you pull him into the drug game instead of sending him to school, you cannot tell me Black Lives Matter.
And you steal from the stores in your community. And when they finally put a major retailer in your neighborhood, you go and you steal from it so much that they end up saying we can't be here anymore. These are the things that we do to destroy our community. Now, it's funny, I remember, because we live in Baltimore, so we had one of the most popular malls when I was growing up was Mondawmin Mall. You know it well. And they had finally done all this build-up at Mondawmin Mall, and it's right before the Freddie Gray riots, and they had all these major chains that were there. It was unbelievable. I said I never thought I would see the day when I saw all of this at Mondawmin. And after the riots, they went there, they wrecked everything to the point that these major retailers said, we just can't do it anymore. But this was stuff that was happening prior to Freddie Gray. This wasn't just Freddie Gray. So we lost major retailers, we lost jobs, we lost opportunities, we lost people that had management opportunities. We lost all of this. In our community, we begged for this. We worked hard to get it, but we don't always respect what we have because we don't respect community. And as brown people, that's our biggest issue. And we need to, because I ain't black, I ain't nothing black about me. Black is this thing. I'm not black. This tablecloth is black. I'm not black. I'm brown. Amen. And I'm caramel, matter of fact. So I think that what happens, what we run into a lot of times is that we don't think about how to build community. We're thinking about, we teach our kids all this anger, all this rage, but we've not taught them how to use it effectively to accomplish a particular purpose. We have to think about, and I know this is not the purpose of our conversation, but we don't always think about how to transport wealth to one generation to the next. We don't understand it. We can't comprehend it. We don't know how to build legacies. Some of the richest.
We don't know what a trust is.
We don't know that. That's a whole nother story because we don't know anything about money. We don't know anything about it, but because we're nothing but consumers. We get and we spend. We don't understand this. Again, it goes back to Black Lives Matter because we don't give kids the tangible skills to know how to manage money. Now, this has been bad, and so because I hate to say this to you, most of the problems that we have are economic. It's not. We think it's white on black crime or racism. It's purely economics.
Yep.
Because I say this all the time, systemically, we are in America, we talked about this, we all kind of navigate to our own groups, our own tribe. We're very tribal in America. Nothing's ever changed about that. Italians are tribal. That's why Baltimore, we got what? Little Italy. Well, we got Park Heights. Come on, right? We got Jewtown, right? As we call it, right? And then, we talk about this in Baltimore because there's Northern Parkway. And the joke when I was growing up, and I know your mom would know this, they said the shortest path between Israel and Africa is Northern Parkway. You know what I mean? And that's what they used to say, growing up. Yeah. And so it's with the difference that you have.
We have Indian areas, Asian areas.
But then and look, and we're doing well, and they don't always like everybody. And I hate to say this, it's gonna sound bad. It's okay. Because we don't all think the same way. We don't all do the same things, and it's okay.
You naturally, as a person, you naturally kind of connect to those that are like you.
Yes, you do.
So, it's only natural. It's a part of hierarchy needs to be surrounded by self-actualization. So to be around people who remind me of you, remind you of yourself. So you need that this is my community.
Y'all forget my dad being proud. She quote Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Go ahead now.
You get to a point where, you have to be able to go back into your culture. Now, I know a lot of people that understand stock. I know a lot of people that understand investing and financial things and credit principles and all of this. And there are some people trying to pour back. But are you really taking the advice of those people? Are you listening?
Well,
because that's the only way we can do legacy.
I'm going to tell you what I think happened. I think one of the greatest damages to African American people, to black, brown people in this country, and not everybody, because this doesn't apply to everybody, it really happened probably in the 60s and 70s. 60s and 70s were very damaging to us. Very progressive time, but also a time of a lot of reduction in some areas. So where maybe your grandfather, or your great-grandfather, these guys managed their money. They understood money was important. They criticized them keeping the money in the house and under the bed. But these guys managed money, and they had money. They bought property. They understood what had to happen. Somewhere along that period, right, we forgot to teach we were so busy fighting for recognition, which I don't despise the civil rights movement. I think it was necessary, especially when it came to the idea. I got a complicated issue with desegregation. I think it's complicated for me because I think that what happens to a lot of us is we don't understand the importance of developing financial heritages. We're teaching generations how to manage money. We'll teach them how not to let people treat them bad, but we don't teach them how to manage their finances, which is really one of the number one causes for committing suicide and death and stress and committing murder, and because they don't understand how to manage the resources. Now, here's the preacher coming out of me. Jesus said, where a man's treasure, you'll find his heart. So if I'm not managing my treasure well, because what's going to happen is I'm going to have issues with everybody. So economically, let me give you a case in point. Just recently, again, it's sad to see what happened to Mr. Floyd. It was an ugly situation to see on national television. Time will tell whether or not, what happens with that, because that's a whole nother story, right? But what I will say to you is that now all this money came flooding into this little girl's life that would not have been, to his daughter's life, that would never been there. They put a guy in a gold casket. Really, we could have done something else with that money. The idea that they spend all this money, and that is here, is liquid money, by the way, these resources that are available, and we're taking money, putting it in the ground. Somebody got to help me with this, because I was sitting there like, are you kidding me? I'm not despising the man's upbringing, his nurture, where he was in his life at the time of his death, but we got to do better than that.
It's just like
we done had a $50,000 funeral for a person. And I'm sitting there like, what are we doing with all this money? You do stuff like that with somebody who.
It's just like you
gotta live a certain kind of life for something like that.
We getting stipends and refunds and unemployment and all that. And Walmart is selling out of TVs and bikes and all of that stuff. And we are the ones buying them. I pay bills with mine because that was my thing. I felt like for me, and I said this, I was like, any money that they give me during this time is going to that. And that was my mentality behind it, because I took on this viewpoint of, if I do not align myself in a specific way, how is it that I can leave anything behind me?
And then The Bible again. A wise man leaves an inheritance. A wise woman leaves an inheritance to his or her children's children, right? You know, and one of the things I wanted to applaud you about, because again, I know how you work with your nieces, your nephews, and, you know, those of you kind of grafted into your family. And it's important that it happens, because we don't necessarily have those individuals that understand the power of communal and getting kids.
We lost the family matriarchs.
We lost a lot of that, but we destroyed
matriarchs.
it. We destroyed it because, again, we didn't value community. You know, and again, this goes back.
We took advantage of it too.
We go
back to the 70s, like you said.
It fell apart. It fell apart.
And in that time frame, a lot did happen, and I'm not going to just act like we did it to ourselves in a part. There was a lot of things put into the community that was not given to other cultures per se, because you have. It's just something as simple as the difference between Coke and crack, the difference in what was given to two different cultures.
Fair enough.
In order to function. So you have the one that was put into the black-brown community that destroyed your life.
Okay.
And literally because of that, and it's stuff out that you look. I seen something the other day with I want to say Crazy Bone, if I'm remembering correctly, and people might know about it. That's Bone Thugs and Harmony. He has like a little show, but he was reading a letter from somebody that had kind of came out, didn't really disclose the name, but came out about a whole conversation that was had about how they were going to change hip hop to increase or change the mentality of how black people were going to function in order to produce more people to arrest for the jails, because they were actual private investors in the public issue of public jails, because everybody, if you don't know, jails has investors and they get paid for filling jails. So they used a whole thing that was, they used hip hop to fill jails. So then our entire culture keep buying into what media gives us instead of sticking to the core of who we are as individuals. So we keep going to the media about our knowledge. We're not teaching ourselves things. I.e., we can go right back to Black Lives Matter. When you sit here and you hear a person say Black Lives Matter, it resonates with you as a black person. My life matters. But you are actually pushing, when you sit and you're like Black Lives Matter, you not pushing as a straight black man, you're not pushing nothing about your life.
No, because we're not getting that $5 billion they got in the bank.
You not even about your money, but the thing is,
money it is important. Now,
money is very important.
Because you understand. Because I look.
But before we can get the money, we need to get to your mind. Like right now, mentally,
that's true.
Mentally, we don't believe in mental health as a black community. We don't believe in developing our children as a black community. We keep letting media teach. We keep letting the grandmother. It was a whole time frame, and it's a whole time frame where we had so many young girls having babies that grandma raised them. Mm-hmm. So then you never really became a mom.
Right.
So now your grandmother's not, the grandma not there no more, and then that family structure broke down. The fathers followed that whole hip hop realm, and then they were in jail.
Well, you
have a whole family structure that broke completely down. That we are not internally taking the initiative to fix. Before I go out and tell you to respect me, I need to fix myself internally.
Now look, you ain't gonna get nothing but a praise the Lord, hallelujah for me.
I don't need you, and I tell somebody like, listen,
personal responsibility. Come on,
change a racist person's mind.
No.
He has to change his own mind.
That's right.
What I can do is not be a representation of what you think.
Yeah.
That's it, and that's all. I cannot be what you. You can think of me as a monkey. You can think of me as dumb. You can think of me as uneducated.
Ain't nobody gonna think it about you, girl. Stop playing.
But they can't, because I won't allow it, because I take initiative in myself to teach myself.
But personal responsibility, which is really the core of this, you got to take some personal responsibility, which we don't do. We don't teach our kids to take personal responsibility. It's always somebody else's fault. We never take the responsibility. We've got to do better.
We've got to do something different.
Who we going to blame because I got pregnant at 12, 10, 16, 17.
And I had somebody
I can't, you can't blame that on somebody who don't know you. And it's a systemic issue. It's not. This was a personal decision and choice. and you cannot expect. But let me go back to a point you made.
Okay.
I think that, and I don't know, with some other older saints and older people kind of understand this. They remember this. That years ago, African American people and people that were here, we were multi-generational families. So, for instance, there were times where kids, for varying reasons, got sent down to the country to live. There's certain times they got sent up to north to live. They got sent to other places to live because of circumstances,
Save
situations.
your life at all costs.
Right. So we understood it was a family that you're gonna stay with your cousin for a while, so
Get
you
you
get
out
yourself
here till
together.
you get your mind right.
And so the
Yeah.
idea, we understood the mental health issue because we were communal about it. We understood the breakdown happens when, again, the community.
Well, that's not mental health.
breaks
That's
down.
environmental. That's changing of environment.
Well,
That's not fixing
I'm
mental.
not just talking about. I'm not just talking about. Some of our mental health is a causality. So some things happen to trigger some behaviors.
No, I'm actually dealing with mental health. Like, we have a whole stigma against therapy.
Oh.
We have a whole
Well,
stigma.
that's another
Right.
session.
Yeah, we have a whole
Okay,
stigma
so-
against real mental health, like really dealing with the trauma. Because some areas, I'm gonna be real, like we're gonna use Park Heights just because it's cliche and everybody knows it. Living in Park Heights,
Well,
you need a therapist.
those of us that are from Baltimore,
Yeah,
know it,
that's
for
it.
sure. You gotta remember that.
You're gonna if you need a level of therapy because you're surrounded by environmental impacts that change your life. Me personally, I grew up downtown, by Lexington Terrace. I know at 8 years old what it was like to hide behind a step from a drive-by. Do you think that didn't traumatize me?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you think when I went out to different places, I didn't have to find a level of protection? Or, you deal with, when you're in assaulted areas, do you not know? And if I worked in a psych office, I remember even the stuff that our children did. And I'm going to say that I remember a little boy who got banked on a bus by 8 little boys. And it created PTSD, which created ADHD, which created a troublesome situation. So now he was like 14 and 15 at the age.
You don't even feel like I need. She don't even feel like I need some counseling because that all happened to me.
That's the thing. But we're looking. But
Right.
he's consistently getting in trouble. But it all stemmed from him getting banked from a group of boys when he was like 9 or 10 years old. But you go down the line and you look at him at 16 and 17 and you're wondering why he's in jail. It's because you're not fixing the issue. And you didn't teach them 8 boys that you don't jump somebody. That is the core problem. Like, where are we changing the mentality? There's a level of help that's needed in our community that we won't go looking for because the stigma that's put on getting real help.
Yeah, I said it jokingly, but I mean, you kind of sound like my whole life. Watch me get shot at. I done seen that. I've been, I got jumped at Gifford Baltimore Rogers Station. Then I had that experience. I've seen all of this stuff happen. I've experienced a lot of it, and much more than we can talk about today. Mm-hmm. But the idea is in the right community, and I think the difference where, and I can't speak this is everybody's solution. This is not everybody's moment. But when I authentically came to Jesus, and that was something real to me, and to this day it still is. To me, it was a very real experience. It's not something I did because I'm trying to be religious. There was a time I was religious, so I went to church. I did that. And I did the church thing, preached religious. But there was a time that something happened to me that I had this intimate encounter with Jesus. I became a new creation. And all those things, the old attitudes, the behaviors, even the pains of my past became something I could use as a way to testify to others about what life could really be like. So,
that's because a true encounter with God does healing.
Yeah.
So,
well, yeah, true.
That healing, the thing is, if you aren't, and I'm not talking about the pray about it healing.
Yeah.
That real encounter with God does it, because I wasn't this person pre-God. Like pre-encounter.
I know.
And so, yes, I know. I wasn't this person, but I had to, not only do you have to go through the encounter, you have to open your heart to go through the process.
Yes.
And it's not easy. And my mom can tell you, and I've told you before, sometimes I look in the mirror and cry because I don't remember, who is this woman? Sometimes.
Yeah.
So you get to that person, you have to be open to change. But we have to coming to God will definitely change your mentality about community, because knowing God is not about, it's a selfless act. Serving Him is a selfless act.
You know,
Like,
and that's such a good point to make. And we're almost done today, but this thing is heavy to because, you know, I was telling my wife the other day, we were having a great conversation, and especially with a couple people were talking. I said some of my life is lived because I lead a community of people. I'm a pastor of a church, pastor three churches, and so my life, how I live my life, is huge, and so. Listen to things I wanted to go do, maybe even in a way that I'm not doing, you know, maybe I'm making a bad judgment, or just because I want to go do something. I can't do everything I want to do because I have kids who watch me. I need to set a good example for them, so I live my life a certain way.
I appreciate you for that.
You know, I have, you know, spiritual sons and daughters. I got sons and daughters that, you know, God has given to me. I have a church that looks at me. You know, I have people that look at me in the community that say, look, if anybody's living good, holy, that guy is. I have a wife that looks to me to be a man of integrity. And so my community holds me accountable. And I could do what I wanted to do. Paul actually said that all things are lawful to me, you know, but not all things are expedient. So I could do what I want to do, but the community depends upon me to live. Like, I can't live my quote-unquote best life. I gotta live the life that I gotta live a life that exemplifies what it means to be a man. I had to.
Be why? Because other people's lives matter, right?
Because all lives matter. I shouldn't say that. I'm gonna get in trouble. They're gonna block us.
But realistically speaking,
because much like you,
Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives
Matter. Your family matter. The people in your influence matter.
Everybody does.
Like, and this is not about this. What I'm saying right now, ain't got nothing to do with racial injustice.
The community where I pastor a church, it matters. The community where the city I live in, it matters. The nation I live in, it matters. You know, to your point, you brought up, and I want to make sure you hit this. Even people who may criticize people that look like me, it matters, because I'm not doing this for them. I do this because this is what I believe a man ought to be. It's what I believe a father ought to be, what a pastor of a church ought to be.
And I'm going to tell you this.
And I'm going to live that life.
So I'm going to tell you this. As a person, so I've been under your tutelage for now, 15 years. The first 3 years, I never actually spoke to you. I said hi, bye, gave you a hug, and I kept it moving. And I came from an environment where I went through church hurt, as you call it. And I vowed never to step foot in the church. And I tell you this, I've told you this before. But I watched you for 3 years. The thing is that as people, we have to understand that we're being watched. So when you say, and I'm going to use my godson as an example, because he was saying something about Black Lives Matter. And I told him, I said, I explained to him what it meant. And I explained to him, you know, what it doesn't mean and what it do mean. And then I also said to him, but what you are trying to say. So let's separate now. Black Lives Matter, the movement, does not mean Black Lives Matter. It means transgender men matter, the single family women only household matter, LGBT, all that stuff matters. It's not the cultural Black Lives Matter. So in the context of what you think you're saying when you say Black Lives Matter, is that me and my race matter enough that we need to be respected and cared for. So what I'm saying right now is in that lane. So I explained to him, I said, now with you saying how you feel, will you live up to it? So you don't get to say it. You don't get to go out here and run your mouth like, oh, I matter, unless you're ready to live that life. On both sides, you're right. On both sides of the fence. Absolutely. I am very much a person that, and this goes for your walk with God and everything. Are you willing to live the life that you say out of your mouth? You do not get to say that my community matter, my family matter, I matter, because you can go even individual. You can't say I matter, but you're destroying yourself. You don't get to say Black Lives Matter. You don't get to say the Black culture matter. You do not get to keep confessing what you won't own. or live up to.
Wow.
So, and
Wow.
it's not in perfection, as we talked about before, it's in transparency.
Yeah.
So, I'm not a perfect Christian. I am a growing kingdom worker.
Yes.
So, when I fail, I get back up and I go. I matter, and the people in my environment matter enough to me that I make decisions based on how they affect those in my sphere of influence. So it's things that I want to do so bad that I can't do because it will affect those around me. And for me personally, I have 10 nieces and nephews. I have about 7 godkids. I got grandnieces. I'm literally surrounded by children. And in my mind, I can sit and I've been told, like, I looked at my oldest niece and I was like, that's me. I could go around kids I deal with and be like, that's me, that come from me, that come from me. And you can see your influence in their life. So what influence are you leaving behind? This legacy thing. What are you leaving? I cannot keep telling you that I matter if I'm leaving negativity and pain and hurt and death and strife and crab in the barrel mentality about everything. I need to leave behind knowledge, education, a push. Even it doesn't even have to be money, because if money is not your strong suit, you can leave behind a mentality of strength. If you teach a child, give a person a fish, they eat a meal. Teach a person a fish, they live a life. They can eat for the life. So if you don't know how to do one thing, I'm quite sure you know how to do something.
And listen, because we're coming to a close, because we're going to finish this next time.
Okay.
But I just believe that a part of that process, and I agree with everything you've been saying, because it's important for us to take responsibility. And we cannot continue to look for, and again, we look for the boogeyman in the closet that's coming to get us.
Ain't nobody gonna save us.
We got to make up our minds.
And ain't no man holding us down. Ain't nobody gonna save us.
Well, we can't keep living like that. We can't. I know your mom, in our service today, she gave testimony about, all the credentials she doesn't have, but the job she has today. And this is not anything new for us to hear that.
Yeah.
We've heard this before. It's not that. It's because you have to have one faith, determination. You must be very clear about your objectives in life. You must live a life that is, that respects others. And if you do those things, and you understand the value of our community, of our families, of what's valuable about one another, and I'm not, saying this to your mom just because it's, I've watched her where she's come from. I remember when she first came to this church, and struggling with addiction, and look, had every reason to get up and say, look, life has dealt me a bad hand, and I'm sure she said that at some point in time. But at some point she had to say, look, I gotta live, and you gotta make a decision to get up and say, listen, we can't keep looking back and saying, well, if they change this law, I'll be okay. Change this law, I'll be okay. Change this law, I'm going to be okay. Change this law, I'm going to be okay.
People to fix
listen,
the things that we gotta
there's
fix.
certain things that God has given to us. People come to this country in droves from African countries, from countries in Africa, over 200 so that's there. You talk about all these people that come here,
And they work as
and they come here, and they come in their communities. We have Congolese people here. They go to their Congolese communities. They stick there very close and very tight together. They help each other with resources and things like that. We got people from there to Jamaicans hanging together, so on and so forth, and they help work together. You got Asians that work together. Everybody does. Now, we may not be able to say that, but what we have to do together is this. Make a decision that if we're going to be effective, we're going to make some tough decisions. One, we're going to really make decisions that are going to benefit the community. We're going to start looking at what is beneficial to the community as a whole without anybody else's input or influence.
There you go.
We don't need
your
it.
Band-Aid
Because I'm going to close it with this, close our conversation, because we're going to go long and keep going with this. Because I look back at some of the most industrial time in the black community. Madam C.J. Walker, we talked about when we started. During segregation, black people were making a lot of money
Let me say this.
and starting a lot of businesses, and we were doing well. I'm not encouraging segregation again, because I don't think that's the way to do this today.
No.
But what I will say to you is this, is that if we're going to be effective, it's about understanding our community needs people to stand up, be who we say we're going to be. Men need to get back to God. Men need to get back to church. That's how you start community, getting back to the place of worship. Stop making excuses about, I got to go do this, got to do that. That is a bunch of stuff. We need to get back to God. You can't keep doing it, because when we worship God, we get ourselves in right position and right priority. Throwing nickel and dime in church is not going to do it. It's when we get back to worshiping God, living for God, being an example. You be an example to your children. You show what your husband, show your children what a godly husband looks like, what a godly father looks like. We stop sitting around here playing games. We're going to talk spiritual on YouTube and Facebook, but can't live it outside. This is not the day.
And then the women can come back and be in that right position.
Yes.
Like, that's the thing. What I wanted to say before we close out,
Okay.
I did a leadership summit with school, and it was a couple things that was said that was very important. The lady said, Miss Laura Coach, she said, there's a difference between knowledge and understanding.
Yes, agreed.
A difference between knowledge and understanding, and if you cannot simplify something, you don't have knowledge of it.
Wow.
So it's time to go beyond the understanding of who we are as a culture and really know who we are.
Wow.
And another speaker said, you always bring your own boat, meaning I don't need your boat because I have mine. So if we come in with our own boat as a community and say, this is what we are going to do to restructure our community, and we start rebuilding our community, then I don't really need anybody else to do anything different, because the demand that our community will place will make it happen.
Yeah, listen, and we're not going to say these things are going to be easy, but again, that's why we got to do it, because it's hard. And I remember, and again, we preaching today. We got 5 closings, right? But I never forget John F. Kennedy said this, and we are going to stop here. He made a statement: we're not doing this because it's easy. We're doing it because it's hard, and because it's got to be done. And we have to do whatever it takes to be better than what we are. And we cannot depend upon anyone else outside of us. Well, we can all work together, because we're all Americans, white, black, Asian, African, wherever you're from, we're here together, and we got to work together. But at the same time, as a group of people, we need to learn. I love that point. Let's bring our own boat. Let's start doing some things that may be tough and challenging, but we can get it done. And that's why I believe the church is going to be essential in this season. I really do. So listen, family, look, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you joining us again today. It has been an incredible conversation, and I pray God's blessing upon you again. This has been Apostle Damian, and it is
Minister Natalie Johnson.
Amen. And here with Real Talk, and we'll see you real soon.